Hey, is this thing on? Do we remember how we do this? My gosh, it's only been 4 weeks, but it feels like forever. Welcome in to the Outlap F1 podcast. This is our season 5, episode number 9. We are back. F1 is back after the mini spring hiatus. I don't know what else you would call it. Maybe we would call it the spring fling or whatever. But anyway, we are back and back at it tonight. You've got Andy, and I'm along with my normal preview co-host, Cody, tonight. Cody, how'd you enjoy the break, and how's it going?
It's going great. I enjoyed the break, other than the fact that there was no Formula One. It was a little crazy that we got a little taste with, what was it, 3 races, and then we're off for just as long. So really happy that it's coming back and got something to talk about again.
Well, there's plenty to talk about, and if you were lacking Formula One, get ready. We've got 5 races in the next 6 weeks, so we're going to get right into the thick of it. But before we do all that, just as a reminder, you can find our show as always on Twitter, what's left of it, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast. Do us a favor, see our link tree in our show notes to find us in all those different places. If you happen to be seeing this on YouTube, please click the like button and the subscribe button if you like our content. And if you're on your favorite podcasting app, do us a favor and click the 5-star button on Apple Podcast or Spotify. That helps us get our content to you that much quicker. You can email our show, as always, at chatnow@outlapf1.com. That, I know, is still working. You can find our wonderful website, www.outlapf1.com. Thank you, as always, to our continuous monetary supporters. We are so grateful. Those include Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to become a member and support the show, please see our link in our show notes. $5. It all goes back into making the show better. I have equipment that is sitting in a box that I'm hoping to debut on Sunday if I can get it to work. I've tried it once. I don't know how technologically advanced I am, but we're going to find out. We're going to give it a try, dang it. So we'll see if we end up pivoting very quickly on Sunday back to our normal setup, or if I can make it work. But again, you can see our link in our show notes if you'd like to do that. Please continue to take advantage of our code OUTLAP from the good folks at Manscaped. You can get 20% off. You can get free shipping. If you're into those types of products, it's a great deal, and we're happy to pass that on. You can find our buddy Vincenzo Landino. And if you were following him on Twitter, he was at Talladega last weekend, and boy, did he have himself an adventure. So you can check him out on Twitter. You can also check out his shirt line at thef1guy.com. It's good, high-quality F1-themed merchandise at not necessarily the F1-themed prices, which is hard to find nowadays. So please feel free to do us a solid and check that out if you'd like. And our final sponsor, the Portage Park Development Project, the thriving community in the Upland Metaverse. If you're from Chicago, Portage Park will sound familiar because the Upland Metaverse is based on real-world cities and properties, and Portage Park is a real neighborhood in Chicago. And they want to show the best that Portage Park has to offer. Come join them. Links to the Portage Park Discord server, racing track maps, and socials are in, as always, our podcast show notes. And as always, we hope to see you in the metaverse. All right. Well, for a bit of a break, the news came at us thick and fast and crazy. I don't think I was able to get it in. If we missed something, I apologize. But the big story that dropped, I think it was Tuesday morning, the sprint format that we knew is no more. And those changes there have been changes, they've been approved, and they're in effect now. Not later, not next year, now. All right, Cody, take us through a quick little rundown of what's changed, and then we'll hop into it.
All right. So previously, sprint races, the grid for the sprint races was determined by the traditional qualifying session. You had your sprint race, and then sprint race results determined your grid for the full Grand Prix on Sunday. Well, now the sprint, and I was amazed at how quickly this got rolled out, because it's, like you said, we just heard about it on Tuesday, and it's taking effect for this weekend. But the sprint format now is going to consist of a single practice session for the weekend before any of the qualifying or sprint sessions take place. So just one session to get the cars in the setup that the teams would like, and get to know the tires a little bit. And then from there, we have our traditional qualifying session. Again, it's still on Friday, so sorry to anyone that is going to be missing out on qualifying because they're at work and aren't going to be able to watch it. But the traditional style qualifying is still on Friday. However, that qualifying session will not determine the grid for the sprint race. It now, just like any other weekend, determines the grid for the Sunday race, the Grand Prix. The sprint grid is determined by a new sprint shootout qualifying session, which follows, from my understanding, pretty much the same format as the regular qualifying, with 3 qualifying sessions where you drop out the slowest 5 drivers at the end of every session. However, the length of these qualifying sessions is a little different. It's 12 minutes for Q1, 10 minutes for Q2, and only 8 minutes for Q3. So only enough time to maybe put in 1 flying lap or 2 if you're really trying to get around the track. And then the qualifying results for that sprint shootout session, that determines the grid for the sprint race, which will be, both the sprint shootout and the sprint race are both on Saturday. So you got the sprint shootout in the morning and you got the race in the afternoon. And there's nothing from the sprint race that carries over to the Grand Prix. There's no, it doesn't determine the grid anymore. The only thing that is carried over are grid penalties. So the way grid penalties work now are grid penalties in FP1 and Friday qualifying will apply to the race itself, which makes sense because your Friday qualifying is for the race. Grid penalties in the sprint shootout apply to the sprint. Still making sense here. And then grid penalties in the sprint will apply to the race because I guess you still have to have some sort of punishment for breaches in the sprint race. So any of those grid penalties will apply to the Grand Prix. Parc Fermé breaches mean pit lane start in both the sprint and race. However, power unit penalties only apply to the race. So that's actually news to me. I think that's kind of a good thing because it means that if you're taking a power unit penalty for the weekend, that at least you still have a good shot to score some of those points in the sprint race. For the sprint race, the points are still the same as last year. So that's 8 points for first place, decreasing by 1 point all the way down to 1 point for 8th place. So that hasn't changed. Time allocated to the grid procedure for a Grand Prix will be increased from 40 minutes to 50 minutes. And at certain races, I guess this additional time will be used for the presentation of the drivers to the fans. So a lot of information there. A lot has changed, and just since Tuesday. And I gotta wonder how much the teams and drivers knew about this in the weeks that we had off here.
It sounded like a lot of this was pretty much universally and unanimously approved. The reason that this is coming into effect as quickly as it is we had all 10 teams. And when do you ever say that? We had all 10 teams basically in lockstep in agreement, which tells me they've been negotiating this for a while. The fact that there wasn't even one dissenter, somebody, Gunther Steiner or, Williams or somebody usually is the one voice that says, hey, maybe we don't necessarily want to do this. But when I look at this, I think a lot of it makes sense. It definitely solves the sprint FP2 problem that you kind of got with that format where you had the session after Parc Fermé where cars were running around, but you couldn't really change anything. And it didn't really tell you anything about how the race or the sprint or anything else was really going to go. That gets fixed. I do like the fact that if you're a promoter, you definitely have a draw for all 3 days. It
Hmm.
fixes the other problem of if your qualifying gets a little wonky because you only have one practice and then you go straight into qualifying, and the sprint basically then undoes that, you end up with kind of a traditional grid on Sunday. That was what we were seeing that a lot. So it fixes that problem. So those two into the good column, I like that right away. In terms of setting the grid for the sprint, I know you have to do this somehow. And you also have to do it. You can't basically add a ton more running because we've already got engine rules and stuff that are set up, and we've got all this other cost cap stuff that we always have to take into consideration whenever you do anything like this. The qualifying, it's basically from everything I've read, regardless of the fact that you have 12, 10 minutes, and 8 minutes, it's one flying lap. Is pretty much basically how that's going to work. Otherwise, those tires are pretty much done. It's interesting to me that you're making the tire selections mandatory across the board. Okay, I don't know that I love that. I always used to love when one of the teams would try to get somebody through on a set of harder tires to see if they could do it. Um, okay, fine. I don't know that I love running mandatory mediums. I just have an issue. At least it's not mandatory hards. And that actually begs another question that I have, because we also know that we're supposed to have two qualifyings at some point this year. They haven't announced when. That are supposed to be Q1 on hard tires, Q2 on mediums, and Q3 on softs. So until that comes out, I don't know if this replaces that or if this just is. I suspect this is kind of off and on its own. So that's fine. The penalty system that they set up, I think, like you said before, I think that makes sense. So that's good. I've got kind of 3 good points to this and one kind of, I'm okay with it point on it. So I don't have a problem with it. It is going to make doing qualifying and watching qualifying for those, especially here, a little more interesting. This weekend, however, will not be affected because the thing is so dang early in the morning that I think you're fine. You can basically watch with your coffee and then go off to work. So this weekend, it lines up really nice, at least for me. So I'll take what I can get on that front. So yeah, I mean, this was obviously thought out. It was obviously something that the teams have talked about. You know, they were trying to figure out brewing things. The only part that, it definitely comes from the way that MotoGP has structured their sprint, and I think that you've seen in the first couple rounds, if you watch MotoGP at all, that sprint format has been pretty much universally accepted. So this is kind of going in that direction, and like I said, I think it solves a lot more than it creates in terms of problems. I wish we almost would have had this first, and then kind of gone and see what this does. But yeah, I guess I'm okay with it. The only thing I don't love is the fact that we just got this dropped on us on Tuesday, and now we're all trying to figure out and catch up on it. But I guess that's the world of Formula One.
Now, do you think that if this proves to be pretty popular, that this is like an indicator that we're going to see even more sprint races, or maybe even sprint races like every weekend going forward?
Well, that's what
Because
MotoGP's done. MotoGP has done the sprint on every weekend. So, this is definitely one of those tinkering things, and it just seems that Liberty has been trying to tinker with the qualifying format ever since they really kind of came on board. You know,
Mhm.
the last Bernie change was that knockout qualifying, and that was universally hated, and that was just an absolute unmitigated disaster with nobody going out on track at the end. So we've gone from that to, I think, something that can and probably will work. I think it does. It keeps the sanctity of the Grand Prix. We're really only talking about, in retrospect, kind of minor points, but points for that for some could be really significant. So there's definitely motivation for everybody to participate in it. You don't get the necessarily rescue of your weekend that you used to get before. Okay, that's fine. I think that makes sense. I know the promoters all want to have this. Like, they all want relevant running on Friday to get butts in the seats. They want, a reason for everybody to show up on Saturday. Again, TV ratings to
Want to
come up a
make
little bit
that
on
money.
Saturday. Oh, of course, of course. Well, they're paying the ridiculous amounts of what they're
Yeah.
paying for in the contracts just to have the cars there. So you
Hmm.
have to try to find a way to make that up. And I think this is, yeah, I think you're going to see more venues push for it more, especially if this gets basically universally accepted and the drivers tend to like it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that was a lot to digest. Wow.
Yeah. We're going to be digesting.
Also, that came with that. We also got this little story that, oh, by the way, we've also now increased something that makes sense. Look at this. Increase of the yearly allocation of ICEs, turbochargers, MGUHs, and MGUKs from 3 to 4. Why they ever thought you were going to get 20 some odd races in with 3 of those units and not get to penalties, I don't get. This one, I think, makes a lot more sense. This is in effect as of now as well. Again, universally voted on, approved, rubber stamped, so it goes into effect now. Every now and again, the FIA got to get one right. We got to say it when they do. I'm in favor. Cody, what's your thought?
Definitely in favor. I think this one's a no-brainer. With just 3 power units, or, well, I guess everything that goes into the power unit. So this is an increase from 3 to 4 for the ICEs, turbochargers, MGUH, and MGUK elements of the power units. Sorry, Ferrari, no control electronics. But there's absolutely no way, I don't think any of the power unit manufacturers are producing anything that's going to be able to go throughout the entire year, like you're saying, with just 3. It's an inevitability that you're going to be taking in a power unit related penalty at some point in the year. And I even think that with 4, you're still probably going to end up with a power unit related penalty at some point, but I think there will be a lot fewer of them. Like, you won't see teams taking like so many of them throughout the year, like we did last year. And I think it's just a great idea. Honestly, I think 5 would be probably the sweet spot, but they are trying to promote reliability in these power units, and I think 4 is a nice middle ground.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Completely. I think you're right. I think actually what you're really looking at is 5 elements per. At least I think you're going to get through the bulk of your European season before you start seeing Friday qualifyings that are completely irrelevant because the grid is totally different because 8 teams decided to all take their penalty at a track that can overtake. So I don't think you're going to see that game until the end, depending on how the championship goes, the championship might not even be a main talking point by then. We hope not, but we'll have to see what happens from here on. This is kind of the reset. There's also, I didn't even put it in the document, but plethora of upgrades that are going to happen here for a lot of teams. This is going to be, I think, kind of at least this year, this is going to be like the new Spain, where, if you're looking for upgrades and new floors and different elements and different winglets and all that, and you're one of those types of fans, this is the weekend for you. So when that, what do they call it? Show and tell report comes out, I think Friday morning. That thing is going to be like, I think about 5 pages long from what I'm hearing. So, that's a huge deal. So yeah, I mean, like I said, this one, it seemed to make sense. I love it. Let's go in terms of additional elements. Like I said, and like you said, I think 5 is probably the real number, but I'll take what I can get. I'll take 4, and we'll see what happens there. And as if we didn't have enough big news, then today happened, and we got big shakeups happening at basically at AlphaTauri. With a Ferrari element in there as well. So the big news, Franz Tost, who has ran Toro Rosso / AlphaTauri basically since its existence as team principal, is going to retire at the end of the 2023 season. He has not been fired. This is just him making a decision. The fallout from that will be that Laurent Meintjes will come over from Ferrari at a date to be determined, because there's definitely going to be a gardening leave. There's a lot of Ferrari staff. That Ferrari garden is going to look really, really awesome by the time this year is out. I want some of the tomatoes from that to make some spaghetti sauce, because that's got to be some awesome gardeners working right now getting paid to watch races. I don't know that he's
No.
necessarily left Ferrari as of now, but I'm pretty sure if it's not now, it's going to be pretty darn soon. So he will take over basically in the team principal role starting in 2024. Again, date is not yet to be announced. But the other big news for AlphaTauri is Peter Bayer was going to leave his position over at the FIA, and he's going to join AlphaTauri as the team CEO. So this is now another team developing the Alfa Romeo type structure with CEO and team principal / representative type of structure. So that's kind of interesting. And if you're afraid that Franz Tost is just going to be out in the cold with nowhere to go, no, he's still going to be around, but he's going to be on as a consultant for AlphaTauri in 2024. The other thing that I think tells us is we knew at the beginning of the season, we talked about it then, we knew AlphaTauri was basically almost looking to sell. There were stories coming out that said Red Bull had kind of soured on the program, didn't necessarily want to keep it going. Apparently between then and now, it's come out that there were lots of offers for that AlphaTauri entry. It looks like all of them were rejected. And this is now Red Bull injecting new money and new resources into that team. So it doesn't look to be, it looks like it's off the block, at least in terms of the sale. Cody, lots of big news. What's your thought?
I think it's kind of too bad that Franz Tost is going to be leaving his position as team principal on a year where AlphaTauri is not really showing much success. They had that win with Pierre Gasly a few years ago. That would have been the high note to leave off on. So unfortunately, on that side of things, he's going to be leaving the team when they are pretty much running at the back of the field. But like you said, he's going to still be on as a consultant, so he's not going to be going too far away. It is interesting that their new team principal is someone from Ferrari, but I'm sure Lauren Mekies is going to be very capable. And I'm personally a little disappointed that the team isn't getting sold. I think it would have been a really good opportunity to bring some new faces in. I've been crossing my fingers for a long time now that Andretti would be able to squeeze their way onto the F1 grid at some point, and who knows, they still might. But I was hoping against hope that just maybe Andretti would be buying the AlphaTauri team, but it looks like it is not to be, at least at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I totally got when I read that blurb, I'm like, well, yeah, I guess that closes the door on the Andretti coming in as buying an existing entry. Now, they're obviously going through that FIA process to try to get approved as an entry kind of standalone on their own. So, still, I think lots to be determined. I think actually we're going to see in a week or two when they're all here in Miami. I know Michael is probably going to be in the paddock and trying to get as much attention and interest as he can, and he's right to do that. And he's got, I think he just came off of a marquee win in IndyCar for the Long Beach Grand Prix. And, his protege driver, Kyle Kirkwood, who we've mentioned on this show a few times, got his first IndyCar win. So, there's talent in the pipeline. We know Colton Herta is an established talent. We know that, they've got good creds, on the way in. So I don't think this kills the Andretti bid at all. I think it just closes one route for it. In terms of just looking at Franz Tost's career, I think he's been around 18, 19 years, which is ridiculous in terms of F1 timelines, in terms of just, being there. He's a master developer of drivers. We've seen at least that much come through. If you get past Franz Tost, you're pretty much probably the goods. So if he gives you your blessing, you're probably okay. And I will miss his pointedness and his absolute no BS assessments of what's going on in the world when he speaks to the media. That's definitely going to be for sure. The other thing that's significant is this is yet another Mattia Binotto protege now out at Ferrari, and we are slowly watching. We've talked many times on this show about pivots. We're watching Ferrari do kind of a slow roll pivot here because I think I saw somebody had a list up of all the guys that Bonato brought in, and I think there's only like 3 of them left. So yeah, it's turnover at Ferrari. We're probably going to see some change of concept going on at Ferrari. That's the next team I'm looking for to say, okay, we've heard Mercedes is doing it, and oh, by the way, little drop of news here. They brought James Allison back to help with that out. That happened while we were on break. And we know McLaren's doing it. And now we're going to hear probably Ferrari doing it. It's all kind of an attempt to catch up to the rabbit out of the gate of these regulations, and that being Red Bull. So, yeah, I mean, lots of things to unpack here, and we're just now back into it. So I mean, we'll watch all of this and we'll see kind of where it all goes. But yeah, I mean, interesting times all across the grid, and we haven't even had a race for a long time. So we'll get into all that in just a second. All right, so I think that's enough news. I think we can actually get into the weekend proper here. Hang on one second. I can find my right buttons to push. So we've got our Pirelli track facts. We're in the Azerbaijan. We're in Baku. Cody, tell us about it.
All right. So this weekend, we are back in Baku for the Baku City Circuit in Azerbaijan. This is the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Number of laps around the circuit for the Grand Prix, 51. Length of the track, 6.003 kilometers. That's 3.73 miles. This circuit is the land of the 90-degree turns, so it also, looking at the overhead of the circuit, always cracks me up a little bit. As far as the Pirelli track facts here, these are a carryover from last year, but I'm pretty sure we can still be pretty safe that the tire selection is going to be the C3, C4, C5 tire compounds. For track characteristics, we have a 5 out of 5 for traction, 4 out of 5 for braking. Seeing a lot of 1 out of 5s here. 1 out of 5 for lateral load, 3 out of 5 for tire stress, 5 out of 5 for track evolution. And then we've got a 1 out of 5 for asphalt grip, 1 out of 5 for asphalt abrasion, and 1 out of 5 for downforce. So definitely a lot of high speed, straight line speed at this track. Qualifying lap record, that goes to Valtteri Bottas, set in 2019 with a 1 minute 40.495 seconds. And the race lap record, that's Charles Leclerc, also set in 2019 with a 1 minute 43.009. Most wins at this track. It's kind of a funny one because for as long as it has been the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, there has not been a repeat winner. So we have with 1 win each as the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, Daniel Ricciardo, Nico Rosberg, and Sergio Perez. Again, with 1 win each. I've got a funny feeling we're going to see a repeat winner this weekend. So the track will be different next year, most likely. But, who knows? Maybe we'll get some Alonso magic. Most constructor wins is a tie between Mercedes and Red Bull with 3 each. All right, what's the circuit like, Andy?
All right, this is a mixture of wide open along with tight and twisty. The long main straight along the Baku shoreline is a slip streaming mecca, with cars able to run 3 abreast into turn 1. The action often looks a lot more like IndyCar than necessarily an F1 track. However, from there, the track loops around into the city's narrow, winding Sherry Share Old Town, dramatically winding past Baku's medieval city walls. As in Monaco, slightest mistakes are punished quickly and severely, while setup-wise, teams are forced to choose between downforce for the twisty bits and less drag for the straight. As for the weather, and because it's a sprint weekend, we will have weather for all 3 days. We always have weather for all 3 days, but we're actually looking at it this time. So for the qualifying on Friday, it will be sunshine with some cloudy intervals, high of 72, so right down the middle for your track temperatures. Winds will be out of the south at 15 to 25, so a bit gusty there. 15% chance of rain. For Sprint Saturday, few passing clouds, otherwise generally sunny, high of 79, so a little warmer there. Winds out of the south-southeast at 10 to 15, only a 12% chance of rain. And for the race on Sunday, cloudy skies early, followed by partial clearing, high of 78, so probably again, a little more hotter than we were generally accustomed to. Winds out of the south at 10 to 20 miles per hour, a scant 8% chance of rain. All right. So we're going to take a quick break. We will reset everything here. We're going to get into our predictions in just a little bit. It's choose your champion time. We're going to come back at it and try to tackle an very interesting circuit in the Baku City circuit. So come on back. You won't want to miss it. All right, welcome back. This is season 5, episode number 9 of the Outlet F1 podcast. It's our Azerbaijan Grand Prix format. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight, and it is now time. It is choose your champion time. We are now getting it back. This is our Azerbaijan predictor game. A little bit tweaked because of the sprint format this weekend. So we're going to hop into it. Love that theme song. Brings me good vibes and Johnny Cage all over again.
I'm more of a classic Scorpion guy myself, but
I used to dominate with Johnny Cage. I used to be able to actually do pretty good with Sonya. I eventually knew most of the moves for just about all of them. But it's good times, man. Set that thing at the hardest level and just dominate and go through. And then you get to hear all the little stories about what happened in the actual plot line that they had. That's when gaming was real, man. 16-bit goodness right there.
16-bit spinal rips.
Yes, Andy's old. All right, enough about that. We'll hop into our game here. We've got a tight race between the two of us. I think I'm up 2-1, but this is your chance to even the score. We will start with our qualifying predictions. The qualifying for Friday, the 2022 pole sitter was Charles Leclerc. Do we think we're going to get a repeat of that? I don't know if I'm looking at these documents. Cody, what's your thought?
I'm thinking that I'm not gonna do any catching up based on pole sitter because I'm going with Max Verstappen, and like I've said pretty much every week, I think you'd have to be a little crazy to go with anyone but Max Verstappen. How about you?
I thought a minute about Perez because it's a street circuit, and this is usually one that he really likes. I don't know that he's going to do it in qualifying though. So I'm agreeing with you here. Max Verstappen, it's his until I see somebody take it away. That's what I want to see. I want to see one of these other cards upgrade themselves to where it's a real horse race for that. But until I see it, I can't believe in it. Even if Max breaks down, well, then we won't get points. But anyway, I'm taking Max for pole on Friday. So our qualifying lap time from 2022 was a 1:41.359. Cody, you did a good job of reminding me how off my note was a little minute ago. So I thought we were way too fast. But what you got for a lap time?
I'm going to go with just a little bit faster than last year. I'm going with a 1:40.950. About 4 tenths faster than last year.
All right, very good. I'm thinking this funny format, it's the first time we're trying it. I think it's going to catch a lot of these teams off guard. That FP1, I think, will be intense. I don't know how many teams are going to get clean laps in to do a good quali sim. So I don't see this being a faster circuit, but I see it being close because they're all going to push at the end of the day. So I've got a 1:41.597, a little bit slower, but close to kind of where we were last year.
I'm relying on that Red Bull Rocket DRS.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be in. You're going to see it here. Ooh, boy. That straight is a long way. So, all right, moving into now, I guess we're just going to do, traditionally we've always done the sprint podium. So I guess that's kind of what we'll do for this one. We may get into sprint shootout stuff, but quite honestly, I want to see kind of how it works before I try to predict how any of that's going to go, because I think it is the throwing darts at the dartboard at this point. So I'm going to go with Verstappen to take the sprint win. I'm going to say Fernando Alonso, because I think in a sprint type format, that's where he's going to shine. I have actually a bit of negative things happening to Sergio Perez in the sprint. So I'm going to say Verstappen, Alonso, and George Russell. because even though Mercedes are pivoting, even though they're changing all their concepts, I still think that car is fundamentally good. So I see them maybe climbing in there to be the best of the rest. So Verstappen, Alonso, and George Russell. Cody, what's your thought?
I agree with you with Verstappen taking P1 for the sprint. I also agree with you that Russell seems to be pretty strong in the like the earlier parts of the race. Like I mean, he was running right up front at the last race until his he got screwed over by that red flag and his engine crapped out on him. But he seems to do pretty good with the sprints. So I've got Verstappen P1, Russell P2, and Perez P3 because A, street circuits, and B, Red Bull.
All right, very good. That all reasonable predictions. So our race podium. I think we're going to have some differentiation here. I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to say it's a street circuit. He's going to have a bad Saturday, but he's going to rally his rear end off on Sunday. I've got Sergio Perez taking the win. It's such a random circuit. I think this is one of those Max Verstappen has a problem, tire blowout. He's kicking the car. There's just a lot that can go wrong, even if you're way out in front. So again, I think I got Sergio Perez in P1, got Fernando Alonso again in P2, because I think the Aston Martins are really best of the rest. And I think this is where we see a Lewis Hamilton show up again on the podium. He's good on race day. He likes things probably the way that they were. It makes sense. Traditional race format on Sunday. So Lewis Hamilton for P3.
I like your podium as far as excitement factor. I really hope we do get something like that. My podium is a little bit more boring, but I think a little bit more, perhaps more likely from what we've seen for the first three races. I've got a Verstappen P1, Perez P2, so that Red Bull 1-2 again, and still got Russell being this P3 spot. I think he's going to have a strong weekend.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, so our next category is fastest lap and then the driver. 2022 was Sergio Perez with a 1:46.046. I think it's going to be something close to that. I like Sergio Perez for the fastest lap. I'm kind of hedging my bet a little bit here, even if he's not necessarily in contention for the win. That might send him out to grab that cheeky point there. So I'm going Perez with a 1:46.258.
I've got, just like with qualifying, I've got the fastest lap being just slightly faster than what was done last year. And I've got Max Verstappen doing it with I'm guessing a 1:45.899. In that last race where Verstappen I think it was last race, right? Where Verstappen just kept taking the fastest lap away anytime anyone was getting it. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. He seems to not even want to give up just that single point. So got it for Verstappen.
All right. So for bonus picks for this round, we've collectively selected P5, P8, and P11. So a bit of grid spread here. I guess my P5 does not make any sense because I can't have them in one more than one place. So you go first, Cody, and I will come back to it. So tell us what your bonus picks are.
So and I really don't want this to happen, but I'm going with my gut. I've got Alonso in P5. I think we're going to see that first race this year where he's not going to be on the podium, sadly. I've got Lance Stroll in P8. So I think this might be a little bit of a weaker weekend for Aston Martin. I think I've been hearing that there's been worried that they might not be as good at this track. So I kicked them back a little bit. And on top of that, we got a lot of car upgrades coming for this race. So I think they're going to be much more in a competitive mix this week. And then more for the humor of it than anything else, I've got Yuki Tsunoda for P11.
David Croft will love this podcast just because of that. I guarantee you. And we know he listens. We totally know he listens.
Yeah.
That's where he's getting his info from. Not the card from the producer. He's getting it from the outlap guys. It's all good. So for mine, I apparently thought Lewis Hamilton could finish P3 and P5. He can't. So I'm going to
Schrodinger's
say
Hamilton.
George Russell will finish in P5. I'm going to give Lando Norris P8. I think McLaren's upgrades will hopefully lead it out of some of the dark doldrums. But I don't think they're going to do particularly great here. But I'm hoping it's not going to be an unmitigated disaster. So let's hope for that there. And I do think Williams will show well here. The long straights, good track. I don't know if it's good enough for points, just given the competition that they're up against. But I do have Alex Albon, hopefully keeping the car together, coming home in P11. All right, so for our prop bet this week, we've got, because of that long straight, thought it would be appropriate to try to predict what the speed trap number is going to be at the end of the day. I'm going with, and I think last year when I did this, I had like 331, which I thought it was the whole straight. The speed trap is not all the way to turn one. So I've learned my lesson. I've come back down off that ridiculous number. So I'm going to go with 323.5 kph. Cody, what's your thought?
My thought is that this one is a complete shot in the dark for me because without you telling me what the speed trap was last year, I would have had not really much point of reference on this one. I'm going a little bit faster though, just because of some of that rocket DRS that we're seeming to get out of the Red Bull. So I'm going with a 326.3 kilometers per hour.
All right, very good. Does your cat agree?
That's a good question. I mean, she's a Ferrari fan, so she's probably hoping that Leclerc is going to be setting that max speed. But
oh, very possible. Very possible. All right. Awesome. So if you like watching your Formula One in the middle of the night, if you're in the US, this is the weekend for you. Oh boy. So here we go. Friday, FP1. Get your coffee ready. 5:30 a.m. Eastern. That's on ESPN2. Friday qualifying will be 9 a.m. Eastern. So you probably can watch it. Have your coffee, have your donut, then go off to work. Do whatever you got to do. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be interesting. 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. ESPNU is your destination for that. The sprint shootout will happen 4:30 a.m. Eastern. That's 3:30 a.m. start in the Central Time Zone. Yick. Yikes. I don't know. Maybe it's better for me that way. We'll see. Anyway, that's on ESPN2. The sprint itself will occur 9:30 a.m. Eastern, so a little bit more reasonable timing there. 8:30 a.m. Central Time, that's on ESPN. Pre-race festivities start Sunday morning, 5:30 a.m. Eastern. So again, very, very early on ESPN. And the race itself will happen Sunday, 7 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Central. So as the sun is coming up in this part of the world, you get your F1 fix in. If you can't get up that early, we more than understand. There are replays available at 6 o'clock in the evening on ESPN News and again at 9 o'clock on ESPN2. But that'll be when we're just about ready to start our review. It's going to be Deanna. She is back after a bit of a hiatus on the podcast, but she will be back hopefully on Sunday with me. And we're also going to have the guest. We have not forgotten about him. We finally coordinated, lined up all the schedules. We think we're actually going to be able to pull this off. So it's me, Deanna, and a guest recapping all of the fun from F1 being back, like it never really went away. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix, we'll see all of the fallout from this new format. We will recap it all. So for Cody, it's been Andy. This is always fun to do, and we'll see you Sunday. And as always, may all your laps be fast.